Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. Today is May 29th, and I already covered today's anniversary. I'm going to link to it below, and we're going to have more fun with this discussion that Tim Pool hosted between pro-life activist Kim Hawkins and abortion-loving pastor, I have to put that in quotes, Ryan Phipps. Phipps. So this segment is called Pro-Choice Pastor asks pro-life activist if she knows what heretic means. And I'm not necessarily going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to try to take a chunk that makes some sense and, maybe break this down as I did others. I'll link below to my entire selection of response videos to this Tim Pool discussion.
Do you know what the word heretic means?
Oh, yeah, I do. I'm sitting, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you?
She avoided saying I'm sitting across from one. She bit her tongue there.
You know what the word really means, honestly? Can you tell me what the definition means?
Do you want to look up the definition of heretic, Tim, and read it aloud?
Well, I mean...
Heretic is someone whose beliefs are actually scrolled.
I'm actually looking at the etymology.
Yeah, go to the root of the word.
Oh, the
but I don't know if you want to make a point. So if you're trying to make a point...
Oh, the definition will make the point, yeah.
So
okay, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes with this. I doubt that it's going to be in a particularly Christian direction, because there's no way you can make Christianity jibe with support of abortion. It's just the two are antithetical.
do you think, what's your question with heretic? You want to look up the definition of heretic? I'm looking at the screen. A
From the
person
Greek,
holding an opinion at
heromai.
odds with which is generally accepted.
From the Greek origin, heromai, meaning to choose, able to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Latin to Old French, heretic.
So if you are limiting someone's choices,
What? I think
how
if we're
can
gonna,
that be freedom?
Heresy is colloquially defined as belief or opinion contrary to Orthodox religious, especially Christian doctrine.
Very interesting.
well, I think
and
if we're going to
so-
look,
Okay, so he's getting back to the root word choice, which that's some serious gymnastics to have to take something back, clear back to the root word when it has deviated so much over the years to what it actually means. That's like insisting that a fox is any creature with a bushy tail because it comes from the German word meaning bushy-tailed, and that it doesn't specifically mean a vulpine creature. I think vulpine's the right word for fox. Hold on, let me look that up. Yeah, I was right. Vulpine was fox. So what he's doing is the equivalent of trying to say that a fox is any creature with a bushy tail and not a vulpine creature. So this guy, he really struggles to try to justify his stand.
look at heresy, we think about, I was like looking at something you had written in
I think that-
2022 when Roe was reversed. You said God is a pro-choice God, but yet when you look at scripture, and I didn't really want to get into religion on this
I
debate,
don't
but
want to live
when
in a
you look at
country though where your
there's lots
religious
of scriptures
beliefs
say God's not
govern.
pro-choice.
But I see...
So that would be a heretic.
Your
pastor. Someone who
beliefs
says that
are
God is pro-choice.
religious.
That
These
is
are religious
heretical too.
opinions.
Okay, so apparently he feels like he definitely lost it on scientific grounds because he weaseled and never got down to what it is that makes any given human being deserving of protection under the law. He just completely weaseled away from that in the previous video we looked at. So now he's trying to move it over to religious grounds and argue that banning abortion is purely a religious move. But why he brings the word heretic into it, I do not know.
But so I have a question for you then. My opinions on abortion are based on the Constitution
Yep.
and secular science. I'm not a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the secular argument would force a permanent banning federally of abortion, and the
Does
religious
the
argument...
Constitution speak to abortion specifically?
It sort of does. The 14th
Yeah,
Amendment
It
person.
sort of does.
No, see,
Right, so this is a question that has to be answered by SCOTUS, but I'll read it for you.
Yep.
It says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property
Do you
without
notice-
due... Can I finish?
Yeah.
Without due process of law.
I wonder if he's going to get to the fact that the actual opinion in Roe said that if the personhood of the unborn child was demonstrated, the whole thing would crash to the ground. I wonder if he's going to bring that up, or whether Kristen's going to bring it up. Let's see.
Nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law, which would mean the Supreme Court has to answer the question, are unborn persons?
That's right. So you notice in 14th Amendment, it starts out by saying citizens, but then intentionally changes it from citizens to persons.
This is important too, because illegal immigrants are protected under the Bill of Rights. Now, a lot of people are upset over the Second Amendment on this one, the argument being they've broken the law, and thus there's a due process restriction on the right to keep and bear arms if you are illegally entering the country. But we do know that people who are not citizens of this country, tourists, good example, they are allowed free speech, they are given the right to a speedy trial, and all of those things. This is why the distinction is important, that a state cannot deprive any person outside of citizens of life, liberty, or property.
Right.
Scientifically, secularly, and under the Constitution, I personally am demanding we get an answer from the Supreme Court as to whether the unborn are persons.
Right.
It's not been adjudicated. When Roe got overturned initially, I was along with many people saying maybe it is better that we take a federalist approach to this because of the conflict and let states decide. However, upon reading the 14th Amendment and then having several debates over this, particularly with my friend Seamus, I said, no, I disagree now. I think the Supreme Court has to answer this. This is not a question for Congress. The Supreme Court very well could come out and say they're not persons. They very well could come out and say they are persons. But this is not a religious issue. This is a question of when are people granted their rights. And so there is a similar, albeit very different, argument pertaining to slavery, in that the argument made at the time.
Let's see if he brings up Dred Scott or not.
There were abolitionists. There were people who were pro-slavery. Most people were neutral and said, "I don't care, leave me alone." But the issue was the argument of personhood. This is before the 14th Amendment, mind you. When is someone a person granted rights under the Constitution? And of course, the slave owners said they have no rights. They're slaves. They're not protected. The 14th Amendment is written specifically following 13th and 14th, following the end of the Civil War. And now we have the question of are the unborn persons? Roe v. Wade was interesting in that there was an attempt to answer this. It actually came up as, at a certain point in a pregnancy, a baby is inviable. It can't survive outside of the mother. And so this being completely dependent upon the mother's body, there's a question of whether or not we can say yes or no to abortion. However, there is a point that was made about when the baby becomes viable and capable of living on its own. So then where that brings me to in a,
when does a baby become able to live? By living on its own, I'm assuming we're meaning breathing and thinking?
Not necessarily.
No, I mean, I have a friend whose family member is, I hate to be a little crass here, but
Breathing and thinking. Again, he's gonna try to weasel and say that because the fetus can't do calculus, it's not a person.
but functionally brain dead, but alive, and capable of ingesting food, it would be illegal to kill that person.
Sure.
So the issue it's getting particularly interesting, especially with technology. If there is a person who is, let's say, I don't know, they have syphilis, right? And they're on the verge of dying from this disease somehow.
Yeah.
Well, we have simple antibiotics that can cure them, and a doctor that did not do it could be held criminally negligible for something that's so easily treatable. But that's a technology we didn't have back in the day. So if you go back a couple hundred years, somebody who died of syphilis would say, oh, that sucks. I mean, we tried to save them. They drank mercury. It didn't work. And that's what they used to do. It's insane. But, hey, what did they know? So the issue then becomes, as technology advances, it becomes capable of preserving the life of the unborn at earlier and earlier dates.
Viability continues to change.
Right. So this is a particularly difficult question that I think ultimately, under the law and the Constitution, I feel, whether I care, like it or not, the inevitable conclusion is a total ban on abortion, irrespective of people's religion or anything, for two reasons: the constitutional question of the 14th Amendment and the expansion of technology. I think we may find ourselves at a period where the moment a woman gets pregnant, the law will protect that even one day of pregnancy as a life, and then the argument becomes there's no reason to kill it, we'll transfer it to an artificial womb.
That's right. And that's coming. That day's actually coming. They are.
Okay, so I think we're going to need to kind of end this here because we're already 9 minutes into it. Tim's kind of going around and around and around and around here. he so desperately wants to be pro-choice, but everything logical is leading him to say the only thing that makes any sense is a total ban on abortion, and I think he's trying to hit a viability compromise. So in my subsequent video we'll back up a little bit, but I think this was all very interesting. I this is one of the reasons I like Tim Pool. He's a very honest guy, and you can see he's really, really struggling with this. But good on you, Tim, for being honest and just kind of sharing your struggle.